Hello, this is at Carp Baiters and Lucky Carper, and we're going to talk about some of these rigs that he used at Thorpe Lee.
Thorpe Lee for me was a bit of a funny session, in all fairness. It started off like it usually would, with the usual methods, and it wasn't producing the fish, but you know, we could see the fish, and hopefully you'll see from, you know, the rigs that I changed to how I caught the fish, really. So
Alright, I'm going to start off with one of Lucky's rigs here. I don't know if you can see that. It's very similar to a rig I would use, but I would use a ring on the hair, blowback style. Lucky, what would you use this for?
For me, this rig, you know, it's a pretty simple rig. It's the grounds to every rig that I make, in all fairness. If you can just see again, it's just a simple knotless knot. This one's got some stiff coating on, stripped back probably about an inch to an inch and a bit, just to give it a bit more free movement. But you know, it's a pretty basic rig. It doesn't get any harder or easier than that. I would adapt it in certain situations to suit other areas. You know, for me, I was using this rig in the margins on a clear spot. It was quite dark. You've got the leaves and everything that's falling in at the moment, which is really sort of darkening up the margin. So you know, it's a pretty easy, simple bottom bait, tied up like a snowman style, but it is literally just a bottom bait. So pretty simple rig. Like I say, it's, you know, a rig you would take anywhere on a nice clean spot, really. That's about as simple as it gets.
Alright, moving on to a rig I know you use most of the time, especially on bed font. This is pretty much his everyday rig. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that one, Lucky? And
same again. It's the same rig, essentially the same rig. It's tied exactly the same way, except it's got no coating on it at all. It was a coated braid, but I felt that I want the movability in the rig because of what I'm fishing on. I'm fishing on, you know, not very nice bottom. I want it to
you've got
to
a
lay
sinker
down.
on there as well to like hold it down.
It's got a sinker about halfway down, probably 2/3 towards the hook actually on that rig, because it's a bottom bait that I'm using on it. I've tied it up just slightly differently on the hair, which is a KD style, something obviously that you see on TV that you start to use and, you know, adapt it to your own sort of fishing. I wouldn't say I use it religiously all the time, but you know, it's an effective rig and it's good. The actual style of rig again is a knotless knot, and then I tie it on the other end a figure of 8 and just pull it tight. You know, you can loop that into a swivel, you can loop it into just quick links, any way you want to do it, you can use it. You can just make the rigs up, put them in your box, and you know, if you've got different lengths and stuff like that, it can get you over most situations, basically.
Okay, right, as he's already said, Thorpe Lee, the fish weren't having it to start with. They were all around the island. I left after 24 hours because I'd had enough and I wanted to go and fish on my lake, but Lucky stayed, and he started using the maggots. Now we've got a maggot rig here. Not that one. We want the other one. This is a maggot rig. This is Lucky's maggot rig, but he's actually pinched that from somewhere, which I'll let him explain where he got it from.
Basically, you know, the rig is an idea that I think Calder have come up with, or I've seen it on the Calder TV shows, pretty much like yourself. Never used it and had to bodge it together on the bank to make it, in all fairness. I haven't got the right size hooks, haven't got this, you know, pretty much like yourselves. You haven't got all the stuff there all the time. So, you know, I've used what I had in my box to create the rig, how I saw it on TV. I used it mainly because down the margins I saw fish feeding all the time on little bits of bait, but you know, it was very, very hard to get a bite on any sort of normal rig. So I scoured everything down. I actually went down to £10 fluorocarbon on the original rig to get a bite, basically, with this rig with the maggots. I also felt at the time, I had a lot of aborted runs, a lot of bobbing goes right up to the top, nothing there, and you know, I felt the fish were taking in the bait and blowing it out in one swift movement. And if carp baiters can actually hold up, or I hold up the hook scenario here just to show you, you can actually hold the hook rigid I've let go of everything, and it's staying up. And for me, what's happening is it's going into the fish's mouth. The fish will then blow this hook bait back up, which will come that way. And for me, my hook bait's doing that. You know, it's not going to hook them. So although I done well out of the margins on the last night at Thorpley, probably 19 fish, 13 of them were on this rig basically out of the margins. There was probably 6 to 8 fish that I should have had that possibly I didn't get because it wasn't getting hooked. You could put a bit of putty on it, but I think that defeats the object. I still don't think that would actually stop them blowing it back out of their mouth without hooking, basically. So.
And I see we've got another one of Lucky's rigs here. This is his modified maggot rig. I'm going to get him to talk a little bit about this. As he said, he wasn't happy because the hook leaves his hook bait and the hook was flying out. He thought it would be flying out the mouth, and he wasn't getting as many takes as he wanted. Lucky, do you want to just go through this rig and why you came about using a rig ring on a D rig?
You know, I've over the years have messed about with the second hook scenario, even as a kid. You know, with light bits of line from the hooked nylons that you used to get on the bottom of the hook and stuff like that, but never had a bit of corn on it. So the bit of corn for me was the difference into being an unsafe rig to almost a safe rig to use. So I wanted the corn on it. I didn't like the stiffness of the fluorocarbon that went straight through. You could tie a braid onto the end of there and maybe make it, you know, like a combi rig at the end, but that defeats the object to me of being invisible. So, you know, I wanted to get a bit of flexibility so when the fish actually blow the bait out of their mouth, the hook stays the same, and I'll just grab the rig and just try and identify to you just slightly what I'm talking about. When you're looking at the rig there, I'm Mr. Hookbait and my hook's down here. This is my line, and the fish can literally it will come out like that, and my hook's not really changed direction. It's still quite aggressive. As the fish moves away like that as well, I think I'm going to prick it a lot quicker because of the flexibility, and I'm not going to get the fish coming in, picking my bait up and basically doing me all the time.
And finally, we've got one more rig here. This is looks like basically like a combi rig with a link swivel on there and a D rig on the end. What sort of scenario would you use that? That's quite short. Would you use that in a PVA bag, or have you used it in a PVA bag?
Never. I'd never use anything that's as stiff as that on the end on a PVA bag. I'll show you. It is probably very short, and people will look at it and think that's quite strange. But I got to that rig because I was fishing a clear spot. I say clear. It had Canadian that was just on the bottom, so it's clear for my lake. But a lot of aborted takes, so I felt my rigs were too long, so I wanted to come up with something that would go in the water, sit down slowly into the Canadian. It's fished obviously with a D-style loop on there, which you can tie a pop-up on the little swivel, which you probably can't see. Sorry, the little loop link that you probably can't see, but you know, in all essence it sits up like that, and it's just above the Canadian that's sitting on the bottom on what I would say a clear spot is. Most would probably say it's weedy, but you know, when you're fishing with 6 foot Canadian in places, it's a clear spot. So I got to that because I thought I was getting done, and in all fairness, I haven't had a run off of it. But you know, the principle of why I got to that rig is I was fishing long rigs because of the weed and silt and stuff like that, and I felt I was getting aborted takes. So I shortened down. I went to something slightly different, just so I know that the weight of the putty there will actually just hopefully hold the hook in long enough so when the fish pulls away, the leg gets it basically. That's the principle about it.
If everyone's fishing long rigs as well, sometimes changing to a shorter rig can sometimes trick that wary carp, so it's definitely worth a go. Anyway, well that's it from us, Lucky Carper and at Carp Baiters. There will be some more videos in the future, and this is really to go with Stein's blog on Thorpley. Until next time, tight lines.
Tight lines all.